Welcome everyone. For those of you who don't know us, my name is Pigeon. Garet Strange is with me. We are advisors at Hobbs Group Advisors here in Columbia, South Carolina. We are a financial planning and wealth management firm. We are not cybersecurity experts. So our last 5 or so of these webinars that we started this year have been on areas where we feel pretty confident to say that we are experts. So this is one that's a little bit different, but it is an extremely important topic. We think it's really important for our clients. This presentation is more tailored to individuals. I think businesses and employees of businesses, there's a similar theme here, but we think this is a big deal as the world continues to evolve to more of an electronic, digital norm. We think it's really important for you to be armed on how to protect yourself from cybersecurity and people that are trying to infiltrate your information. So today's webinar is about cybersecurity. We're gonna run through this. We're gonna talk about a few things you can do. There is a questionnaire or kind of a quiz you can take to see how secure you are. I think we've sent that to some of the people that registered for this event. We can also send it if you put in the chat box, you'd like a copy, give us an email address. We can send it to you, no problem. And obviously as a follow-up, if anybody would like to talk about some steps they'd like to take as a result of what they've learned from this, we'd be happy to talk to you about that too. So I'll go ahead and start off by saying that, we get, we work with people's money, right? So we're always worried about security and fraud, quite frankly, all the time. And, we get from time to time, get these emails from, that literally come like they're coming from a client saying they're stuck in Europe and they need, $5,000 wired to some, foreign bank. And we get all sorts of stuff like that. We ignore them. But there are people trying to impersonate you to banks, to financial institutions, to credit card companies, and we see it on our end. And I'm sure that there are others that see it as well. So we know it's very real. And the world of being secure financially is more and more important, because just as an example, Fidelity Investments, whom we use to basically house your investment, to hold your money, they require e-signatures now for almost everything. So when we open an account or when we do some sort of transaction, moving money for a client, you have to e-sign. They don't even allow for paper signatures anymore. So more and more important to be secure as it relates to your cybersecurity. So I'm gonna press on to the presentation here. The 2 seconds basically just speaks to how often someone is hacked, how often your information is exposed in the United States. I think there were 14 million people last year that had their data exposed, often not because of themselves, right? Examples: T-Mobile, Facebook, Yahoo. I think for those of us that live in South Carolina, the South Carolina Department of Revenue had their database hacked. So all the time there are third parties that hold your information that have a breach, and they'll inform you of the breach, and then they'll sometimes offer you something for LifeLock or something of those sorts. And then the question is, well, are you secure at that point in time? So what we're hoping for and what we're shooting for with this, which is not going to happen overnight, is we're trying to increase your knowledge, right? So that you are very aware. I think the other thing I'll point out is that cybersecurity is not something you can just, LifeLock and some of those things are okay, but really it's about the practices and about the awareness that you take on that's going to protect you. You can't just you can't really push an easy button and make sure you're secure from cyber criminals. So our goal here is to increase your knowledge and to increase your security. And that's this little chart we have here. And you do that by being aware of perhaps things that you need to be doing better, some things that you may need to change, some things you perhaps need to stop doing. So process is basically a 3-part process. We're talking about discovering what's your score? What are you, how secure are you now? The part 2 is to learn more about some ways you can become more secure. And then part 3 is to actually take some action. And by taking action, we'll have some specific ways for you to do that. So we're now into the meat of the presentation. So goal here is to do this in 30 minutes. I have a tendency to talk a lot, so try to be quick and move through these slides a little quicker. 5 threats every person in business faces and how to fight them now. Garet's on here twice. I'm actually Pigeon, but that's okay.
Got it.
Yep. So part 1, how do you discover your score? As I said, we've got a quiz. And the quiz speaks to yes, no, pretty simple. You get 5 points for each. You can score your rating by how many yeses you get and multiply by 5. We love math around here. So I'll run through a couple of these questions. So one of the things we're going to talk about is having one email address exclusively for your financial accounts. The problem is if you have one email address for everything, that means you've got people that, that have your email address. And that sometimes is a user ID to get into financial institutions. So that's why you want to have more than one. The idea of having one kind of a junk email and one important email kind of separates access to some of your accounts. 2-step verification, we're going to talk about that. It's an extra step that you have to take, not just username and password, but oftentimes you get a text sent to you or something sent to you to verify it's really you logging in. The idea of spotting Wi-Fi, knowing whether you're getting onto a kind of a free public Wi-Fi that's not very secure versus a one that is secure. Making sure your home Wi-Fi network is secure. Making sure you have alerts as far as when your credit card is used or when your bank account money is sent out of your bank account. There's ways you can set that up with your financial institution. Making sure you have control of your credit. We'll talk a little bit about that. So we're going to cover all these things, but this is the scorecard. Like I said, we can send this to anyone if they want to take it themselves. We're not going to go through it all right now, but we're actually going to cover everything that's in this quiz on the upcoming slides. So what are some of the new rules with cybersecurity? And I would point out that these rules are probably going to change again, right? I mean, this is an evolving thing. There's my favorite word there. But secrecy, mindfulness, and Garet, what's that third one?
That's omniscience, Pete.
Omniscience, yes. So
not omniscience.
Yeah, not omniscience, even though I think omniscience is a good sounding word. So we're going to talk about those rules. I wouldn't have come up with omniscience if I created this PowerPoint, just FYI. So key idea number 1, adopting a new level of secrecy. The idea of having an email account that you use for financial stuff and having one that you use for a free trial on some website that that offers something not related to your finances. This can boost your security and your cyber confidence. The reason being is that your email address is often kind of an access point for a cyber criminal to start trying to get into a system, right? So if they don't know your good email address that's used for your banking information, they can't get to your bank. So the idea behind this, create the secret email address. Don't share it, on anything other than very important, sensitive websites. Oftentimes don't use your first name, last name, initials, or other identifying information. Try to create a strong and unique password. That's oftentimes you have to change your passwords quite often with websites. I know that can be difficult, but it is important. The second rule deals with 2-step verification. What I've experienced is that many sites have this available. Certain sites have forced us to start using 2-step verification. Sometimes it's an option that you have to elect. So what is two-step verification? Two-step verification is, as it says, 2 steps to get into a website. Your first step is your username and password. The second step is typically a text message that is sent to your phone, or something that is a push notification that is sent to an app on your phone. Sometimes a phone call that can come give you a code, which is that second step for you to reinforce that this is actually me, right? This isn't someone that stole my username and password. Now you have to be able to answer something else to get into a system. So it adds a level of security. Most sites do have this. If you are on a website and you are not currently using this, I feel certain that there is a way for you to add it. I use two-step verification for almost everything. I was not using it on my Google account. And I went to a cybersecurity presentation about 2 months ago. And what I realized is that my Google account houses some of my passwords. So I was really making a mistake by not doing that. And I hadn't changed my Google password in a long time. So those were 2 things that I got from just, looking at understanding a common sense approach to this. I went and updated my password, set up two-step verification. Now some of those passwords that are stored in Google are a little more secure as well. So key idea number 2. Here's Garet's favorite word. Omniscience, right? Create financial cyber omniscience and thwart fraud. What does that mean? So one thing you can do, which is a relatively simple thing to do, and I think Garet, you've done this before, right? Is to freeze your credit. So by freezing your credit, you can, if you contact the 3 main credit bureaus, that prevents anyone from taking out any, form of new debt application for really for anything that requires your credit to be pulled. It freezes. It can't happen. It locks your credit. You can establish a PIN. It freezes it. And you can do the same thing on with your kids. So oftentimes, a fraud that takes place is that people are using children's social security numbers to take out credit cards and things like that. And the idea being is that you wouldn't know because your children don't particularly have credit. So if you're not paying attention to that, that's a way that fraudsters can get access to. They can basically use your children's credit without you knowing. So the idea of freezing credit, both for yourself and your kids, is a simple step that you can take that prevents anyone from opening new accounts in your name. Our third key idea is mindfulness. We're going to talk a little bit about some steps you can take. Mindfulness is just when you get something, an email that looks suspicious, that has an attachment from UPS about a delivery, you need to do a few things before you click on an attachment. This is probably the number one way, viruses and people gain access to your system is by you clicking on something that's incoming. And there's a process for ensuring you don't do that. And we have an acronym here for email, right? Examine the message and inspect the link. And we'll talk about that, because between looking at those 2 things, you can usually identify if this is a legitimate email or not.
And I'll add a little bit to that. That applies to text messages as well. It's becoming more common for criminals to send you a text with a link that the text comes from a number you don't recognize, but it looks somewhat local, or it says it's from UPS. You have a package for delivery. Click this link to verify your address. And I've seen that more and more recently.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing more of that with text messaging. You certainly have been seeing it for a while with emails. This is crazy. I was in a Walmart, and all of a sudden I had an airdrop just appear on my phone, and it was asking me if I wanted to open that airdrop, which I did not do, but I probably need to change my airdrop security settings. But yeah, on your phone, it's just as fair game as an email. And the same principles kind of apply, right? You need to examine the message. Okay. So by examining the message, So in the case of an email, what does the subject line say, right? Look at the sender, the actual address of the sender. Sometimes what phishing schemes can do is that the name of the sender looks like a legit name that you might know, but then you look at the email address and it's not that email address from UPS or from a coworker or from a friend. But they do a good job of disguising the name. So you have to look a little bit harder at the actual address. Look at the greeting, right? Sometimes it's coming from another country. The English sometimes can be a little bit different. Look at the grammar, look at the person, look at the signature of the email, and then look at the attachment. Don't open the attachment, but look at the attachment. So all these things that have to be done before, and the other thing is you can kind of sometimes use your gut to know that, we've had emails about buying gift cards. We've had all sorts of things that, if it doesn't really make a lot of sense, you need to inspect it further, right?
When in doubt, don't click.
That's correct. So by inspecting the link, right? And by phishers, so this says they'll spoof links. What that means is they'll actually make the link look really legit, but when you actually hover your cursor over the link, you can see more of the address, right? So when you hover your mouse over the link, you can see the URL, which is the actual address to determine the actual link. So like the link could say package, it could say you're tracking, right? But when you hover over it without clicking, it will show you the address, and the address more than likely is not going to be a legitimate UPS address, which you'll know is what you'll know at that point in time that it's fraudulent. So, and the idea of looking at the address of the sender, the same thing, right? The sender could say, someone that seems very legit, but when you hover over that name, it shows you the actual email address. And the email address will not be, if it's fraudulent, the email address will be something different. So by examining those things, looking at the grammar, you can usually determine that an email was not one that that was legit. So, and then there's your cybersecurity action plan commitment. So, what are some things that you can do as a result of this discussion? And from what you've learned to basically do better from a cybersecurity standpoint. When I went through this exercise, as I told you, I realized that I should have had dual factor set up. I hadn't changed an email, password for a pretty common website that I've been on quite a while for a long time. So those were two things that I was able to take action on. And there's probably two to three things when you think about, do you need to create a new email address for your financial institutions? Do you need to set up dual factor? Do you need to change your passwords and make them a little stronger? If you've had the same password for 10 years, that's probably not a good idea.
Or if you use the same password across all sites. I mean, a lot of people do that and do that for convenience because there's a password for, every site now. But, that also increases your risk of being hacked. If somebody gets that password off of one site, they could use it across multiple sites with your email address to, get into all of your accounts. So, not using the same password for all sites, even though it is an inconvenience, it is in your best interest.
Yeah. And so, what I would point out is all this does take extra work, takes extra time. It can be tedious, setting up dual factor means it takes longer for you to get into, a respective website, but the trade-off is that, you will be more secure. And, when you experience fraud and you have to change bank accounts and you have to cancel credit cards and freeze your credit and do some of the things that are even more tedious, we think that these kind of simple steps, and I'll go back here for a second, some of these simple steps we discussed in the quiz, I think are less time consuming than have to fix a fraud, dealing with banks on your debit card being used. All of those things are beyond tedious. So, you know, I'm just trying to make sure we covered everything here, Garrett.
Yeah, I mean, this quiz is really, you know, the actions that you should take. This quiz, you know, these sentences are the action steps. These are the easiest things that you can do to prevent, you know, a large security breach. I mean, it's, you know, it's really about taking the little actions to prevent the largest risks that you have. You know, like Pete said, it is tedious, but if you can do some small things that are slight inconveniences to prevent a very large, you know, security breach, then, you know, that's absolutely worth it. It's, you know, it's about the, you know, your information is likely out there. I'm not trying to scare anybody, but, you know, with all the hacks that have happened, you know, across all these websites and, you know, even the Department of Revenue, you know, even people that don't use the internet very much, like my grandmother, you know, her information is still out there. She doesn't think it is, but I've told her 100 times that the Department of Revenue has been hacked. Her information is out there. You know, it's about doing these small things that prevent people from being able to cash in on having your information. You know, making it harder for them to you know, achieve anything that would be significantly detrimental to you by having your information, because it's tough to protect your information completely. You ought to assume that it's already out there.
Yep, I think that's true. Just going through a couple of these things, we didn't have slides for a couple of these items. One of the things I found is like antivirus software. Often when you get a computer, it comes with antivirus software, but there's a requirement for you to renew it. And so what you want to make sure of is that your antivirus software is up to date. You want to make sure that you're updating your software on your devices, like your computer, on your phone, because oftentimes those updates include some security updates that also take place. So that's a couple of these items. We talked about the credit report, you know, your bank. So whomever you bank with, you should also, as we just said, you should be able to set up dual factor with any banking institution. You also should be able to set up notifications. You know, I have a credit card that sends me literally a notification every time it's used. So when my credit card is run, I see it. And you can do the same thing with banking institutions, right? When money is sent somewhere, you should get a notification on that so that you're aware. If something happens is out of the norm, you at least are notified that fraud is taking place. So that's a really good thing to have. And then, you know, obviously making sure that your home Wi-Fi password is also, you know, has been changed maybe in the last, 5 to 10 years, and making sure that that's secure and has a pretty secure password is important too. So let's see here. I see a question. So the question is, what about use of Zelle with bank account? More and more individuals don't want a credit card payment because of additional charge and are requesting direct bank payment. I don't use Venmo. So Garrett, do you want to take that one?
Sure. You know, I think those apps, you know, Zelle, Cash App, Venmo, you know, those apps are secure in and of themselves because they don't provide anybody else with a direct link to your bank account. You know, you just enter it into the, you know, Venmo software, the Zelle software. You know, what you have to be careful of with those is not, you know, is having a strong password, having a strong username, really limiting the ability for somebody to get into your Zelle or into your Venmo and send money to themselves. You know, those apps and those softwares are owned by technology companies, and they're in the business of security. Otherwise, they would not be in business very long. You know, they're also have, you know, very experienced tech developers on those apps who are, you know, on the up and up and on the forefront of, you know, cybersecurity protection. So I would say that those are safe. I wouldn't say that those would be a preferred method of payment. If you can use a credit card or use something else, that would be, better. But, I wouldn't shy away from using those. I would just use them sparingly as needed and responsibly, and make sure that, the access to those apps is very secure with multi-factor authentication and a strong password.
And I would add to that, I use Venmo quite often. And I think when you're using Venmo or Zelle or PayPal, or, and I'm not terribly familiar with Cash App, but a couple of things on that. One is you should never send money to someone that you don't know, right? So like if you're sending money amongst friends, I think Venmo is perfectly fine, because it's based on their cell phone number. They can give you their little, their address or their handle, I guess you would call it. And you typically have to verify the last four of their phone number. So it's going to them, and they know it's coming. They know exactly when they receive it. When you're paying for a service, or when you're paying someone you don't know, I think that's where there can be fraud. And I think what Venmo has now done, I think PayPal has done this too, is you can actually check a box that says you are paying for a service or a good, and there is an extra fee to whoever the seller is, but it guarantees that if there's fraud involved, that Venmo or PayPal will actually stand behind and refund your money. So I don't think those things are bad. I'm not super familiar with Zelle, but I think it's the same sort of thing. If you're sending money to someone, if you're sending money to someone, I see no, quite frankly, Venmo, and I'm just going to speak to Venmo because I know it better than any others. It's amazing how convenient it is. I mean, it really is. But you got to be careful if you're buying something on, Facebook Marketplace or something like that. You got to be very careful, because there are fraudsters who will basically, tell you, and I think Cash App is the one that's maybe the least secure from a buyer protection standpoint. So, whenever somebody says they only take Cash App, I just tell them, I'm sorry, I can't help them. Or I can't buy whatever it is they're selling. Not that I buy things online that often. My wife has a tendency to find things on Facebook that other people are selling that, like furniture or something. But that's the way I would look at those. But I do think what Garet says is, for the most part, they're pretty secure, as long as you know who it is you're sending the money to, or whom it is that's sending money to you. Somebody can't infiltrate your Venmo if they know your Venmo handle and get your bank account, but you do have to be careful about that. So good question though. We have another question concerning, what if you receive an unfamiliar link sent to your cell? And I think this is the classic UPS example. You can't hover over a text message to see the address on that. This dealt with a UPS, US Postal Service package. My feeling on that is you don't click the link, because I don't think the US Postal Service sends, then the question is, well, would the US Postal Service typically send you something via text? I get the informed delivery email every day in my inbox. And I think your best bet on that is probably go on the US Postal Service website or UPS website and see if you can figure out what's going on, because you click on that link, then you have an issue with someone gaining access to your information on your phone. Garet, you got any thoughts on that?
Well, the fact that, you can't hover over a link that's texted to you, should make you, even more cautious about any text messages that you don't, recognize. You should have more, caution on that than an email that you can't inspect. So, if you get a link texted to you, your cell phone, from a sender that you don't recognize, and it doesn't matter if it's, Microsoft or USPS or the IRS, who will actually never text you. So that's always fraud. Don't click on it. Don't click on any links sent to your cell phone that come from an unrecognized number. Contact the actual service provider, or, whoever texted you that link. Contact them directly and talk to somebody. But do not click the links. And if they send you a phone number in that says, if you'd rather speak to someone about this, call this number, don't call that number either. Go to the website and figure out what the customer service number is to to call, because they can, you know, put a number to call a fraudster on those text messages as well to bait you into that. So, you know, just sketchy text messages are usually sketchy. So just be very careful with those.
Well, and what I would say to that is if someone were sending you it, so if you actually think through it, right, which is not the easiest thing to do right in the moment, but if you think through it and you say, well, all right, who would be sending me a package? And if somebody were sending me a package, how would the U.S. Postal Service have my cell phone number? So that's another reason why, you know, and I don't know that the U.S. Postal Service would contact you via text message. They might, I don't know that 100%, but it would seem kind of odd. Now, if you were the one sending the package and you put that information in when you were sending the package, that could make a little more sense, right? And then that would be some more logic to that. But yeah, I mean, if you're getting things from institutions that don't normally contact you in this way, the prime example is that the IRS, like the IRS calling people, the IRS doesn't call anyone. In fact, when you call the IRS, you have to wait like 2 hours to talk to someone. They don't have enough staff to even answer their phone when you call them, let alone call you. So these frauds where the IRS is calling, saying they're suing people, you know, things like that. I've got one not too long ago from the power company that said they were going to cut off my power. And, you know, it was like a thick Russian accent. It didn't make a lot of sense. I mean, people, the power company, the IRS, they're not going to call you. The U.S. Postal Service more than likely isn't going to text you.
Social Security and Medicare will not call you unless you set up a phone appointment with them to call you at a certain date or time. They are not going to proactively call you.
Yeah. So some of that is just awareness about, you know, why am I getting this text message? You know, 99% of the time you get text messages from people you know who have your number and you have their number. That other 1%, I think you need to be careful. I mean, I get a bunch like in advertisements and things like that I just delete. But, you know, if they're prompting you to click on something, do something, call something, you do have to be, you know, extra aware and on guard. So I'll add, I don't think we have any more questions at the moment, but I'll add, but thank you for your questions. Those were both great questions. I'll add, we have a resource, we have a book. We didn't write this book, but we have a partnership with a company called Horse's Mouth that creates a lot of this content. Two of these people wrote this book on cybersecurity, and I think this is maybe the second or third iteration of it. So they keep updating it as things change and as rules change and risks change. So if anyone would like a copy of this book, we will order it for you. And we have a couple of copies at our office. We're happy to send it if anybody would like to read it. There is a monthly newsletter that we also can put out. We don't do it automatically to all of our clients, but we can send that on a monthly basis with some tips on cybersecurity. And then, as I said, if anybody wants to talk to us, a member of our staff about that quiz, about how do you do this, we will gladly do our best to help you with that. It may require us to point you to a financial institution. You know, we don't want access to your username and passwords of things, but we will help you implement some of these changes that hopefully will make you more secure. And we certainly appreciate everyone being with us today, and I hope you can take something from this. All right, well, I'm going to stop the screen share here. Let's see here. I can figure out how to do that. So
we've got 3 people who said they'd like a copy of the book. So I've written all your names down, and we will get you a copy of the book. I believe it is Keisha Bell. Keisha, if you could send us your contact information so we know how to best get you that book, that would be helpful.
Yeah, and I think we have an email for her registering for this, so we can.
Okay. Yeah, we can reach out to you offline to get your contact information so that we know where to get that book to you.
Yeah, so wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, everyone. Hope everybody has a great rest of your day. We record all these webinars. We put them on our website. If you ever want to go back and put yourself to sleep listening to us talk, you can go back to our website. You can also reference the other 5 webinars that we've done, 4 or 5. We've done 4 or 5, Garrett.
I couldn't tell you either. It's 4 or 5.
Yeah. So anyway, those are all housed on our website. And obviously we're open to any follow-up questions you have. Next month, we are going to do one on long-term care planning and caretaking. So be on the lookout for an invitation to that. And we appreciate you all, and have a great day.